All right. Welcome to another Protocol Engineering Office Hours. This is Rick, joined by Joshua, JCV, and our co-founder, Max Sanchez. We can take your building-related questions and potentially discuss lawn care. Let's see. The question channel has a lot of info about straight. We could we could talk about that.
What is that? Straight?
Straight. It's a project being built on Hemi, by Godbrand. Um,
Oh,
it
the
looks like live
indexer
purview.
data dashboard.
Yes, yes, yes. So it says here, with this, you can view transfers that occur across chains easily, which is currently a problem because without Straight, we would have to go through 3 explorers to check your transactions. With Straight, you can pool using our GraphQL link to show when a transaction is to be initiated and when it was finalized in one place. And for use cases, the Straight Analytics is built on information gotten from Straight using the Graph QL to get data about the amount of transactions and volume flowing through Hemi. They said they're also working on a webhook system, and hopefully it'll make things easier for developers building lending protocols, wallets, payment processors, or researchers that would like critical data about Bitcoin, Hemi, and Ethereum.
Super cool. I have unfortunately not got a chance to look at the GitHub for it yet. I know he I think sent that over like 2 weeks ago, so it's on my to-do list. But yeah, sounds super cool. I know we answered I think a couple questions 2 or 3 weeks ago about it for how to index some of the Bitcoin tunnel transactions and get that data. So yeah, would love to. Is there a where? I don't know how to use Discord. What what
It's in
channel is this in?
AMA, under AMA questions, engineering office hours.
There. Okay. I think there we go. Oh, cool. And they got a demo app here. Let's take a look at it. Cool. We'll have to play around with this more offline, but I like the landing page. It looks nice. Let's look at their docs here. JCB, have you had a chance to look at it yet? I've unfortunately not.
I haven't, and I'm actually, like you, trying to find it on Discord right now.
They got. I'll send this over Slack here. Actually, I could. Oh yeah, I don't know how that works. Okay. It's super cool though. They got a API here that looks pretty rich, and then they're indexing. So they support the Bitcoin Tunnel Manager, the Ethereum side bridge, Bitcoin Kit. Curious what indexing that's. I guess for maybe internal transactions, and then the Pop Payouts V2 contract that we're going to upgrade to. Pretty cool. Like that's a nice clean dark mode interface too.
But is it the right shade of orange?
You know what? I don't even know what the right shade of orange is at this point. We've changed
I
it
have
like
no
3
idea.
times.
I actually have no idea. It looked great.
That was cool.
All right, I see a question, and it says, "What sort of questions? Anything building or engineering related would be the questions that we'll be taking during this session." Well, the royal we. I won't be taking any of these questions.
We should throw some over to Rick just for fun.
Yeah, I mean you could, but I don't know how much I'm really going to be able to help. So,
Are you feeling a bit better?
not really. It feels like it's mutating and getting worse in different areas. But what are you gonna do? That's showbiz.
Well, hope you feel better soon. It's never fun.
Oh, here we go. All right. Ecosystem projects like NFT marketplace, does it make sense to launch a points program without a planned TGE? What long-term value can users expect from participating?
It's hard to do a points program if there's not like a TG at the end that the points sort of convert or flow over into. I mean, I guess it'd be sort of on brand for an NFT marketplace. Like if you had an idea for your own NFT collection that you wanted to mint as like the, official NFT collection of the platform, or if there was like a utility NFT, like anyone with this NFT pays fewer fees on the NFT marketplace. Maybe something like that. So you could have, points program and then it converts over into silver, gold, platinum NFTs that you can use in the system maybe. But yeah, it's kind of tricky if you don't have some sort of, liquid incentive token at some point to convert over to. There's probably some cool creative ideas. I mean, you could do like a, leaderboard for bragging rights, I guess. But yeah, it's if you don't have a token, it's kind of limited what you can do. We could maybe do some hair token stuff with it. We've got a pile of hair tokens sitting around looking for something interesting to do. So I have to run that by Alex and get his thoughts, but that's a potential angle.
See Rick's ignoring my question.
Yes. I've already done that. You can watch Teach Rick Crypto, where I explain proof of work and smart contracts.
We have two of them up, right? There's 2 episodes up, right?
There are 2 episodes up. I think we're waiting on episode 3. We are waiting on episode 3. I don't think that's a fact.
I started writing up a ZK proof script that I need to turn into slides, but that's coming. That'll be a fun one.
Oh,
All right. Let's
but
from
actually,
Alpha.
wait. The more important question is, what pop culture memes are you able to fit into your ZK proof?
So far, not many, maybe 0. But I'll figure some out. I have passing knowledge of The Office and Arrested Development, so I'm sure there's something in there I can pull out.
I mean, those are pretty deep veins to mine for for things.
Right. What are your thoughts on the recent Here Games on-chain statistics?
I don't know the exact stats. I think last week or the week before we did, what was it, 2,000 or 3,000 transactions from Hair Games. So I mean that's
I think the first 3 or 4 seasons were averaging about 1,000, 1,500, but last season, which I believe was 5, it was 4 or 5, forgive me. But yeah, that generated 3,000 total transactions.
that's pretty cool. It's yeah, I mean it'd be great to scale it up if we've talked about like on-chain gaming in the past and kind of the what makes sense to put on-chain, and then from both like what you can actually prove as part of building fair, interesting games, and then also like the cost and scalability of it. So it's again, I'd have to do a deep dive on the tech side of it and see maybe if there's some cool, interesting, like provable game stuff we could add to it. But regardless, it'd be a cool thing to maybe move over to an L3 at some point and have kind of a, like right now, there's not a ton of traffic on Hemi, and so it's cost effective. You can pretty cheaply do a bunch of transactions and do stuff like Hair Games. At some point, if we get more protocols, more users, or our whole adoption roadmap, that will cease to be the case. And so I think it'd be a cool target maybe for showcasing Chain Builder and moving all that to an L3, having it settle back to Hemi for any like token awards, things like that. And then being able to use that as sort of a demo of how you can build on top of Hemi using the assets that Hemi has access to from Bitcoin and Ethereum, but then do that in a more, like a application specific tailored environment that works. It has the right trade-off between cost, DA publication time, things like that make it applicable and a good target for games.
And that's one of the things I always wanted from Chain Builder was a sort of short. I always loved, very interested in the idea of short-lived L3s. So like for a game, there's no guarantee that you actually need that layer 3 to continue plugging along nonstop.
Yeah, there's a lot of it wouldn't probably make sense as like a plasma chain from the original plasma chain design, but that sort of thinking, like you can have, there's either a new season of a particular game, or even if you want to get crazy, like each instance of a game itself could be this like short-lived kind of a little more than a state channel kind of architecture, and then just settle back to L2, which would be cool.
Yeah, more than Lightning, but less than an L3 that's going to last as long as people still make blocks on it.
Yep.
All right. What is the security model behind Vetro? I know it's Bitcoin security is behind it. Could you throw some more light? Although am I working on a YouTube video for my audience?
Yeah, for sure. So we should have a pretty comprehensive docs page coming out relatively soon. That'll be a good reference for that. So Vetro is just it's a DeFi protocol. So unlike Hemi that has Bitcoin security, because it's like a actual chain with blocks and consensus, Vetro, the stuff that's Vetro related on Hemi would be Bitcoin secured by proxy of Hemi being Bitcoin secured. But the protocol design is just running at the smart contract layer across multiple different chains. So the high level summary is basically the master contracts of the system live on the Ethereum network, governance, and in the future, some different yield strategies are going to live on the Hemi network. And then it also has a flexible architecture that lets it use and interact with yield sources on other chains. So you kind of have this hub and spokes model where the hub of Vetro, the core Vetro contracts where you deposit USDC and USDT and get back VUSD, where you stake VUSD into SVUSD or VUSDX, the fixed yield, fixed term product that we're working on. All of that's going to live on the Ethereum network, and then it's going to be able to sort of what's the right analogy? It's going to be able to like splinter out basically and cover a bunch of different networks that have different yield sources that it can take advantage of for each of the different assets in the system. So it's not Bitcoin secure in the sense like there's nothing in the Vetro protocol that's Bitcoin secure. The parts that live on Hemi would inherit that as a property of the Hemi network, but it's more about cross-chain, some cool stuff on Hemi for potential yield sources, especially on the Bitcoin side in the future, being able to source cool yield opportunities for stable coins on the Ethereum side, the broader Ethereum ecosystem, whether that's on Hemi or Base or Optimism, Arbitrum, wherever the yield opportunities are, and then being able to sort of collect all of those and then funnel those into a set of master contracts that coordinate the entire system that live on the Ethereum network. So that's the super high level. As far as the security model, it's a lot different than talking about the security model of a chain. So for Vetro, the security model is basically, there's a couple different layers to the stack. So there's the actual, how the protocol functions and deploys assets to different yield strategies. Part of that's going to be controlled by governance. So there's going to be a governance system that basically approves or proposes and approves new strategies to be used in the system with strategy adapter contracts. So governance would be the security layer against which strategies get approved in the system and get assets deployed to them. The system is built to be over collateralized, and so when you deposit USDC or USDT into the system, or on the Bitcoin side like Hemi BTC or WBTC, and you get out the representative meta layer token. We're still working on the terminology for it, but either the VUSD or VET BTC, VET ETH, etc. Those generally represent a more than one-to-one backing of assets in the protocol. Now, it's not technically backed because of the way that the protocol works. You're trading into VUSD as a synthetic asset. You're trading out of it. And again, we're still working on some of the terminology, and once the docs come together, we'll have a little more clear wording on how to describe each of those pieces. But basically, when the system is working as expected and governance is participating and interacting with the system, you have a layer of strategies and strategy allocations that governance decides on. The protocol earns yield from those. Some of that yield goes to people staking the assets. Some of that goes to people engaging in governance. And so it's sort of this meta layer that makes it easier to earn yield through a system that coordinates and orchestrates yield farming across different chains using different strategies that governance decides on, using different weights and allocations that governance decides on. So that's super high level of the architecture. Happy to dive in if there's any other specific questions, but we do have those docs coming out soon, which should also help clear that up quite a bit.
All right. When will Chain Builder launch?
Everything takes longer than we expect. The current roadmap is Ethereum ZK settlement this quarter, Q3, HBIT VM Q4, and then after that, Chain Builder is probably the next high priority item. So Q1 2027, somewhere around there. There's a very limited version of Chain Builder that would be pretty easy to launch, but I'm not sure how interesting it'd be. Sorry, I forgot to put my phone on Do Not Disturb. Give me a second. Slack. There is a pretty minimal version we could launch, which would just be basically Control-C, Control-V, the current Hemi L2 stack on top of Hemi as an L3. So if there's interest and there's things people actually want to do with it that don't require all of the more advanced stuff that we've been talking about, like the shared sequencing, shared DA layer, or the custom swappable EVM engine, that piece of it, that would be relatively easy to build out if there is interest. But the thing is, since we're not filling up Hemi blocks yet, there's not a lot of economic pressure for people to move off of Hemi to an L3 that still is in the Hemi ecosystem. So it's a little lower priority from a scalability perspective at the moment. But yeah, I would say after HBIT VM, so probably Q1 2027 for a good version of it. If there's interest in demand, maybe a more limited version sooner that's just sort of the Hemi stack moved up a layer and then running on top of Hemi.
All right. Question for each member of the team. What has been your favorite and least favorite part of working on Hemi, and which projects were you most and least excited to build? This ought to be a good one.
Let's see. Engineering-wise, I don't think I have a least favorite. I mean, maybe tooling and infrastructure and stuff like that, because that's just kind of boring. But I haven't had to do a lot of hands-on stuff with that. That's been largely DevOps and SecOps, so I've just been in the loop. But that part's probably not the most interesting. The most interesting for me, as far as stuff we've shipped already, it would be definitely HVM and the Bitcoin precompiles and how we built the embedded Bitcoin full node with TBC and made that drivable deterministically based on L2 consensus. That was a lot of fun. That was a very fun engineering challenge. As far as stuff we're working on now, definitely all the end-to-end ZK provability stuff. That's shocking, I know, but that part's a lot of fun. The ZK market's been fun because that's we need it, or at least we greatly benefit from having a native ZK marketplace on Hemi for all the ZK proving the chain itself is going to need. But it's also just a cool general product that enables a lot of neat things for other people to build. So the current ZK, and I won't get off on a tangent, I promise, but the current landscape of ZK, decentralized ZK proving marketplaces, none of them really fit what we needed for the way that we wanted to structure decentralized ZK proving for Hemi, which I think speaks to a broader gap in the marketplace of there not being ZK markets that there's always this, like with any of the ZK markets, there's always some point that kind of is still centralized or a point of failure, I think is the more important part of this. So for a project, even though the ZK proof itself is a mathematical proof that everything on the chain executed correctly, and this is the correct state of the chain, again, some context that it validates against like Ethereum DA or whatever, who actually serializes the data for the witness that's used for ZK proving is usually up to like a team to run a daemon or something that serializes that data, submits it to the ZK marketplace. And so it'd be conceptually kind of like if Bitcoin proof of work, if there had to be a party involved in the system, and again, it's not used for like block consensus, so it's at a different layer of the stack, but conceptually it'd be like if Bitcoin proof of work needed somebody to every 10 minutes like submit a new math problem to the network for everyone to race to solve, right? Whereas with this design, we are flipping it around, so you define, you can do the original model of serializing the witness, and there's a lot of use cases for that, but you can also do what we needed for the Hemi network, which was letting the protocol itself define the criteria of a successful proof without having to be able to serialize its own witness, which it can't practically do. And so it makes a lot of, especially for blockchains, but even for DeFi applications that maybe have cross-chain interoperability components, it makes them able to autonomously interact with the ZK marketplace without needing a single point of failure of somebody on the team or something like that running this ZK job submission. So I said I wouldn't get off on a tangent. I got off on a tangent, but that's been fun because it's something that we need, and it came out of a requirement of how we wanted to build our network and have decentralized proving work. And I think it's cool beyond the Hemi protocol itself. It's cool for apps people are building on Hemi. It's cool for cross-chain interoperability for any other chain in the ecosystem. So that's been a lot of fun from like a engineering, structure, conceptualization, kind of end-to-end owning this like product that came out of our need and that I think has some cool market appeal. I will stop talking and throw it over to John.
So I guess if you want to go back, I really enjoyed the white paper, the HBitVM white paper. All I do in that, like the whole, like actually trying to lay out what we did in a semi-coherent way was really cool. Future, the decentralized sequencer is the thing I'm most excited about when we can get to that. Current, I've been liking the security stuff. Just, what it takes to keep not just a network, but the people building a network secure has been really interesting and fun. And I realized I had very little to say about any of those, just item, reason, done.
John stays on topic. It's a skill.
Not always, but this time, yes. And I guess I'll go with that and pass it to Joshua.
I think mine's actually very similar to John's. So future, I think the decentralized sequencer is one of the most interesting things that we have planned. There's obviously other interesting things like the HBitVM and things, but it's the one that I'm looking forward to the most. Actually, there's things like Dave that we've built that were very interesting challenges to approach and figure out how to build something around all of opgeth and how we are actually going to create backups in a way that they're not going to be corrupted, and making sure that they're not corrupted before we then try to use those backups later, or
I think
store
someone
those
asked,
backups.
so someone asked in chat somewhere what Dave was.
Yes. So Dave is a data backup and archival tool. We were building it. Basically, we ran into a problem early on of how do we create backups or snapshots of our nodes so that we can restore a node if it corrupts its database, because if you've ever run Geth or Bitcoin D or something, the interesting challenges that come along with that. So we wanted to build something that would be similar to other snapshotting tools, but also allowed us to basically stop an opgeth node and then take a backup of its data directories and then start it again and perform a set of health checks to make sure that it's actually synced and progressing with the chain before it continues, in a way that if it does start again, we are almost certain that the database backup that we've made will work and is something that we can safely rely on at a later time. I think that explains it fairly well. John, do you want to add something onto
No,
that?
that doesn't. Although I can drive home a little further why this is a problem, because the point of a database, like if you do real databases, one of the things is they're supposed to be atomic, right? Like you make an operation and it either happens or it doesn't, and that's great. That's cool. That's the way databases work. That's the way anyone. I assume I didn't do computer science, but that's the way I assume anyone who learned about databases in school learned it. Operations are atomic. There's other thing too. There's the whole acid thing, but atomic's the important one.
And then you have MongoDB and other stuff.
Well, MongoDB is not a database. That is someone decided, hey, let's have a JavaScript thing that can accept data and may or may not ever return it back to you, because fuck it. Who cares, right? Fuck
called a best effort database.
Yeah.
It'll try really hard.
Really hard. It's a database that, it tries most of the time, but it'll do it quickly. It may not do it right. It may not do it every time. And it may not do it quick, but it'll usually do it quick. But yeah, I have a lot of opinions on MongoDB. I do have a MongoDB coffee cup around here somewhere, but because I visited their office once when they were trying to sell me on it, but instead I stuck with my CSV files and a Perl script that did the job just as well. But there was some walk in there too. But the thing with blockchains are almost all crypto daemons, rather than using the proper Postgres or similar types of databases that are atomic, they'll have a bunch of these in-memory databases and things like level DB and all sorts of things. But now you've got a couple databases and they're all work in different ways. So you're never 100% sure that the state on disk matches the state unless you turn everything off. You don't know that on disk state is such that you could pick it up and start from it again. And this is a problem. Like I experimented with this in Geth a long, long time ago, where I would take ZFS snapshots of the on-disk state. And usually you can restart from one of them and things are okay. And then sometimes they're not. And when they're not, it's a problem because you now have a database that not only is it not consistent, but it may be inconsistent in a non-recoverable way. So taking, one option is simple. So let's say you're running just Bitcoin or just Ethereum. You stop the node, you save your state. Hopefully you have a file system or something else that can do it quickly, but maybe not. And you start it back up again. That's fine when you've got a single component. Now when you add multiple components, this situation gets even worse. Does everyone stop? Did everyone stop properly? Did everyone know where everyone was when it stopped? And that just general fuckery is why you need a more complex backup tool than just rsync or ZFS snapshots, or there really isn't anything else good that I can think of, but that isn't just built on top of one of those. And that's the point of Dave.
And to add on to that a little bit too, specifically in Hemi's case, that data synchronization thing John talked about is even more pressing because we have a Bitcoin full node, we have an Ethereum, EVM state tree, we have a Bitcoin light client, and those all have to be in agreement and at the same, relative compatible L2 tip as each other in order for the system to work correctly. And so there's some built-in checks and recovery mechanisms and stuff, but like the Bitcoin headers directory that you have doesn't match. It'll rebuild it from Geth state, but that takes a long time and it's a real pain if you have to suffer that just because you got a bad backup that captured data at the wrong time. So it's particularly useful for Hemi, but also this is a problem that any blockchain daemon has, basically. All of them. I don't think I found one blockchain daemon that I've ever run where I didn't run into some data corruption issue at some point doing something that should not have caused data corruption. And so being able to not only create the backups in a generally, well thought through, coherent way that gets everything flushed to disk properly and isn't just like an in-memory snapshot of data with, like John was saying, something like ZFS, but then being able to actually test that backup and make sure that it works proactively before you actually need to use it to, restore a broken node or something is super useful, and could be broadly useful beyond Hemi too.
Yeah, and Dave actually started as a shell script. We originally wanted to make it a shell script that just ran Docker Compose down and then tarred the data directories and rsynced them to a different place and then ran Docker Compose up. And we realized very, very quickly that that was not going to be stable enough for us to do the level of checks that we wanted to do. Or at least without it becoming a multi 10,000 plus line shell script that nobody would have then been able to maintain. So we made it into this Go tool, and we open sourced it. I think it was yesterday. We were intending on releasing it quite a while ago, but then things changed priorities, so it's now open source. And Antonio and Clayton are working on it very heavily to make sure it's something that we're actually able to start using in production as well very soon. So I think it is my one. It's a smaller project, but it's one of my favorite as well. And then I guess to finish answering that question, least favorite thing is probably just the entirety of opgeth and optimism.
Yeah, there are some demons in there.
Yeah, how many in just the optimism repository?
I forgot my least favorite thing. And that is real simple. That is motherfucking Google Calendar.
That's a creative answer.
Well, you're never going to hear
Right.
someone say they like it, right?
I don't think anyone likes it.
It's better than Microsoft Calendar, but that's like saying, a potato is better than eating rotting rats or something. So it's not a useful comparison.
All right. When will the next Hippo be published, especially with opreth and other works in progress?
We probably have a couple coming out soon. So I think the next one is probably going to be, well, I'll give the list. I'm not sure quite when they're going to get in, but there's definitely going to be one for Oxygen. There's going to be one for activating a hard fork that we're going to schedule prior to the opreth cutover. Originally, we were planning to not hard fork until the next Ethereum hard fork, and that's when we were going to deprecate opgeth, move over entirely to the Rust stack. But now that that's been, I don't want to say delayed because I don't think they ever set a date on it, but it didn't come as quickly as we were expecting.
There is something we need to learn that from the Ethereum Foundation. You're never late if you don't say when something's going to happen.
That is true. It's not helpful, but it's true. But anyway, because of that, we're probably going to schedule a intermediate hard fork that's going to adjust some things with some of the precompiles. It's going to get SegWit data in there it needs a rebuild of the TBC database or a reindex of the transaction data. We're trying to see if we can get ordinals in for that hard fork too. We're still working through some things on the ordinals index or like worst case performance side. So we got it. I think Marco covered this pretty well yesterday, but we got it running very fast for the normal case. So the normal number of ordinals related transactions that happen on Bitcoin, it can process all those for even the worst case standard blocks in like 2 to 3 seconds. So that's looking good, but we are still working through some like denial of service edge case blocks if somebody was trying to maliciously make the indexer take ridiculous amounts of time with like really contrived block constructions. So if we can get that done in time, that's going to go into that hard fork as well, and that's all going to be rolled up into either one hippo or maybe several different hippos, one covering like the ordinals indexer, one with some of the TBC or some of the HVM precompile improvements, and then separately we would have one for oxygen going in as a experimental feature, and then when we do the full cutover to op-ref, that's probably when we do another hippo for oxygen as the primary Bitcoin indexer. So a couple coming up, not sure the exact order, but probably some related to that upcoming pre-opgeth deprecation hard fork that we're working on scheduling.
All right. When will the pop anchor contract become active and start anchoring transactions?
So I assume you're referring to the pop payouts V2. So since we're working on the indexer, that contract is not going to. It doesn't do the anchoring; it incentivizes the anchoring. So we haven't activated it yet on mainnet. It is active on testnet if you want to play around with it, but testnet's its own story because of the crazy testnet 3 like Bitcoin. It's hard to actually get a pop transaction into testnet 3 and have it pulled in time to be used by the pop payouts contract because of the indexing delay that we had to enforce because of testnet 3's rules. So eventually when we move over to testnet 4, either on the current testnet or the new testnet that we've been talking about and discussing and hasn't really materialized yet. But if Bitcoin testnet 3 is behaving, you can test it out there. But it doesn't, the contract doesn't do the actual anchoring, it just incentivizes it. So when we activate on mainnet, people will still be anchoring the same way to Bitcoin, doing their pop transactions, but the incentives will come out of the pop payouts V2 contract. And the way pop payouts V2 works is it's the sequencer looks at the indexed Bitcoin data and pulls the keystones out and then uses those to construct the pop payouts transaction. But the pop payouts transaction doesn't carry like a one-to-one relationship between each payout and the actual on Bitcoin transaction. So from an indexing perspective, that's the one kind of tricky piece is how you line up, if you want to do this for your indexer, how you actually line up the publications to the payouts. Because for example, if somebody did say 2 keystone publications and one got into Bitcoin block 100 and one got into Bitcoin block 102 for the same keystone, those aren't going to be 2 separate payouts in the pop payouts contract. It's going to give them the cumulative value that they should receive for one transaction published in this block, one transaction published in this other later block, which has a lower score. So it's kind of hard. It's doable. You could reverse engineer, like rerun the computation from Bitcoin based on the HVM tip at the point in time where the pop payouts transaction occurred. So it is doable, but it requires some heavy lifting and recomputation on the indexer side, unfortunately. We do have, as part of TBC, we didn't have this originally, but we do have it now where TBC indexes all of the keystones. So TBC right now, originally it just had a UTXO and TX indexer. Then we added a keystone indexer to it, but it's not accessible from inside the EVM yet. So it's there, and it can be used by the sequencer for constructing the pop payouts transactions, but there's not like precompile calls that map to queries against that data currently. And then we're adding obviously the ordinals indexer in. But we have discussed, we haven't finalized any of this, but we have discussed adding precompiles that let you query the keystone data. So that would make that a little easier from an indexer perspective. We haven't done it yet because there's not a lot of obvious use cases for querying the keystone data inside the EVM. It could be used maybe for, cross-chain like finality proofs in kind of a contrived roundabout way. So it could have some utility, but it's, we may add that in, which would make that easier, but it's a lower priority item on the roadmap, actually exposing the keystone indexer through HVM precompiles. It's more kind of background information at the moment that the sequencer uses.
So bit of a follow-up. So what does the actual anchor in?
People running pop miners. So basically people have software that has a Bitcoin wallet embedded in it, and they fund that Bitcoin wallet with Bitcoin so they can pay transaction fees. they go in their pop miner daemon that they're running, fetches keystone data from the Hemi network, serializes that into a Bitcoin transaction, publishes it to the Bitcoin network, and then the TBC keystone indexer picks up that data that's been published to Bitcoin and then exposes that to the sequencer that it then uses to create the pop payouts transaction. And that kind of gets to a interesting blockchain design problem, which is chains can't perform actions in the real world. Like you can't have, Bitcoin. You couldn't have the Ethereum protocol send a transaction, right, on the Bitcoin network, for example. Whenever you need a, human in the loop, so to speak, that actually performs an action, you have to structure it as an incentive system. So you have to say, take Bitcoin out of it, just EVM world. If actually ZK proving is a good example. Sorry to revisit that, but obviously the chain can't ZK prove itself, so you need somebody to do the computations, but you also need somebody to publish the proofs. And so if you have, say, like the ZK proving marketplace on Hemi that we're building, say that's all wired up and running and people are producing ZK proofs of the Hemi network, block extraction from DA, processing those through the block derivation protocol, executing those on known EVM state, executing oxygen state transitions and precompile calls and recursively folding those up into the proof. All of that's working. You still need somebody with a private key who owns ETH who can pay gas fees to go and submit that transaction on the Ethereum network so that the contracts on the Ethereum side are aware of it. So just like that requires somebody somewhere to actually create a transaction, and it can all be, verified once it's done and incentivized. But you need some third party to be running some software that actually holds a private key and can go do that action on behalf of a network. So same thing with proof of proof. It was the point I was getting at. The protocol can incentivize people, but people actually need to go run a pop miner, publish Bitcoin data, do that whole process. There's no way for a protocol itself to do it. If you want to get really pedantic, there may be a way with witness encryption where you could have a chain kind of hold a private key in a sense. But yeah, it's practically, as far as what cryptographic primitives actually work in the real world, there's no way to do that currently. And even with witness encryption, it's a bit of a stretch, but it's a fun futuristic concept to think about.
What other infra would you like to see built on Hemi?
That's a good question. In general, I mean, there's a lot of cool stuff people could build. I think as far as what's kind of like hot and people are interested in, there could certainly be some things around like agentic workflows, agentic payments, agentic trading, building. And it probably wouldn't be on Hemi specifically. It'd be something that for that kind of a project, you'd build it for the, EVM ecosystem, let's say, because it's all sort of the same tech. And then you'd add support for each individual network so that it could route, payments through, this, basically be aware of the interconnectivity between different chains and be able to, run an agentic process that then would have a like deterministic backend that would handle the actual routing of cross-chain messages and cross-chain transactions. There's people building that. I'm not super read up on that part of the blockchain space because we're busy building the protocol layer, and so I can't speak too much to specifics or what's already in the market. But I think that's certainly an interesting area, and it's a fun kind of new design space. It is rife with security issues. So it's a hard thing to build right, but that would definitely be interesting. If Marco was here, he'd probably say cross-chain or just seamless payment infrastructure, which is something that crypto's been trying to build for, gosh, what is it, 18 years now, and we still haven't quite figured it out. So I think there's still improvements people could make to like general payment infrastructure, which would be cool to see. Kind of like revisiting, taking a lot of the lessons from state channels stuff like Lightning, and trying to make a more cross-chain protocol agnostic version of that. And there's been people who have tried that. There was I can't remember the name, there was a project way back in like 2016, 2017 that was doing some pretty cool EVM payment channel stuff, but they just, for whatever reason, they never got off the ground, never got adoption. But I think that's probably an underserved area that'd be cool to see. Hemi specifically, it's not something somebody could start working on quite yet, but hopefully in the very near future, there's probably some cool infrastructure on the ZK proving marketplace. Like people could build like pools that the pool itself interacts with the ZK market, and then users can, with maybe lower end hardware or who want to participate in larger jobs they couldn't do themselves because maybe those pay more as part of market economics or market dynamics. So ZK pools would be a really cool infrastructure item, but it's not something that you could build today. But call it a month when we have stuff open source, people can play with it. It's still not launched in mainnet, but you at least have the core contracts and ZK miner code and stuff like that to work from. So that'd be interesting. That'd be a more Hemi specific angle. There's always room for improving node orchestration, node running. Maybe that's like open source extensions to Dave people could build. That could be interesting. Trying to think of what else. John, you got any other ideas?
I gotta say, node running, it remains anything even vaguely in the Ethereum world. Node running is not as easy as it should be. If anyone ever did any infrastructure there, that would be awesome. And Dave is an interesting entry point to that, for sure. Where I'd actually like to see an improvement. Oh, fuck it, camera. One place where I'd like to see like actual improvements in overall infrastructure is the state of explorers.
Yeah, no, that's a good one.
I mean, it's amazing what Block Scout did, but I wouldn't exactly say we've enjoyed working with it. Etherscan is awesome, but it's this closed source service that you can't touch. Years and years ago, myself and someone that Marco and I worked with did Block Safari, which was the dumbest possible version of a Bitcoin block explorer you could write, where it did RPC, where every time you loaded a page, so it had no internal database, it literally did RPC calls for everything. And that is like the V0 of explorers, and it did not work well.
I'd make fun of that, but an explorer I wrote at one point did everything to disk with flat files, and it was, even for a small chain, it was so bad it actually killed an SSD. So
that's nice.
I can't make fun of you.
I killed the backing disk of an AWS EC2 instance with an Ethereum archive node. So I took down not only my EC2 instance, but other people's.
The beauty of the cloud.
Wow, it was great. The AWS engineers were unable to explain how I did it, but
yeah, Explorers is a really good one. And there's a lot of open design space that I think's not really tapped in. Like all the basic Explorer functionality has been pretty well covered. I mean, Etherscan's a great product. It's between the contract verification, being able to interact with contracts, and being able to detect and understand different types of proxy patterns people use, like all that kind of core infrastructure is really good. But I think a lot of the cross-chain stuff is pretty lacking at the moment, which kind of feeds into Godbrand's multi-chain indexing project that he's working on. But yeah, it'd be, and again, this is like, wouldn't it be cool if, yeah, sure, go try to build it and maintain it with everyone changing things and every network doing upgrades and every interoperability protocol between networks doing upgrades and changing their contract structure. And so it's one of those like problems that spiders out. But I feel like there's not.
That's really... how we ended up with Block Safari. This sounds simple. We just need to show blocks.
Yeah, it's like
It's
the
obvious. You
classic.
asked Bitcoin D for a block. What is the fucking problem?
You should have just queried the block and then shown the raw bytes in the web page. Like,
Yeah.
here's your block. But I do think there's a gap in like cross-chain indexing, being able to say, and you can have like groups of families where you can say like, hey, all of these are, vanilla optimism style chains. Okay, Hemi's an optimism fork, so it inherits these traits, but these things are different. It has this extra Bitcoin piece and these HVM interactions and whatever. But you can kind of like compartmentalize chains by families and then protocols by, or DeFi applications by like underlying interoperability protocols, like layer 0 or Hyperlane or whatever. And so if you were to build indexers that are, you can kind of like structure it by tier. So even say you ignore like chain canonical bridges and tunnel designs and stuff like that, even just like something that's aware of layer 0 and Hyperlane and a couple of the other smaller like cross-chain interoperability solutions, and can kind of like translate each of those into a single common language and then show what's happening cross-chain, whether it's moving value, whether it's just sending messages between protocols. Not Hemi specific, obviously, but I think just in the ecosystem, that'd be a cool thing that no one's really cracked the case on. You have layer 0 scan, which is the layer 0 specific one, which is useful, but like it's hard to get there's not really an explorer where you can pull up like, Hemi and base and see all of the cross-chain things flowing between them, right? Right now, it'd just be layer 0, but, say we got a Hyperlane deployment, say we, integrated into something like AgLayer in the future, having something that kind of aggregated and more intelligently parsed, cross-chain messaging, cross-chain asset transfer, I think that'd be pretty cool. And that's kind of Explorer plus plus. It's like multi, ecosystem explorer or something like that.
All right, gentlemen, we are just about at the top of the hour. I'm not seeing anything
If I could add on
else
to
super.
the previous one,
Oh, please do.
I think there's actually some things in Hemi Network, our repository, that can be improved too. So there's things like the pop miner, BFG, TBC all exist within that one repository, and there's always things that can be tidied up, even just typos and things. But you could look through it and look for ways to improve the performance or add features or close some issues. But we're always accepting contributions to that repository as well. So if you're looking at helping build existing infrastructure and improve it, that's always a good place to start.
And if you want to get more into the blockchain side of it, there's going to be a lot of noise and dust around all of the Rust ecosystem stuff we're working on. So if you want to participate more as like, testing things, running new, beta daemons, and this isn't infrastructure, but just talking about ways to contribute, depending on what you're interested in, what you find fun to do, which running daemons, I wouldn't call it fun, but debugging like obscure EVM stuff, that can be fun, definitely educational. So if you're interested in that side, we'll have a lot of construction zone work with all of the Rust stuff coming in. So that could be a fun place to play around too, do code review, maybe expand features out. There's also some cool stuff we have that could be used in other products unrelated to Hemi. So like TBC is a really cool Bitcoin indexer. We use it for this embedded Bitcoin node inside the EVM, but you could use it for all kinds of other cool applications, whether it be a new type of Bitcoin wallet, or you could probably build a Bitcoin Explorer around it, actually, if that's something that interests you. So, that's cool. Oxygen, there's going to be a lot of cool use cases for ZK proving things about Bitcoin that is external to Hemi. And so, you could build almost like a HVM light version that doesn't work as nice as the native HVM for being able to directly call it and get data as part of contract execution, but it gives sort of a portable limited version of HVM that you can actually use on other chains and use to build cool cross-chain Bitcoin-aware DeFi infrastructure. that could also be used to make like more secure Bitcoin like clients that you can't censor. So there's a lot of cool stuff in our stack that, we built it for Hemi because we needed it for this problem, but you could easily adapt it, whether it's TBC and the Bitcoin indexer, whether it's Oxygen and ZK proving Bitcoin, whether it's what else in our stack, the ZK marketplace and some of the interesting stuff we're working on there for, trying to commoditize ZK proving and translate it to other GPU architectures. A lot of those things could be remixed into new cool projects that may touch Hemi, may not, but just they're cool in the general blockchain ecosystem. And I think with that, we are over. But
I'll quickly say, and there's even front-end things. So the Hemi portal, for example, lives in the UI monorepo repository.
Yep.
You could find issues there or contribute fixes or features there. You could go add dark mode. There's lots of things to do, and if it incentivizes anyone, there's also a open source contributor role on Discord that we do give out to people who've had their pull requests merged or who have contributed meaningfully to any of our open source projects.
Cool. With that, I see one quick question. Godbrand asks about I think he's asking, is the indexer built in Rust? So TBC's in Golang, and then the new Oxygen indexer is in Rust. So there's depending on which of those two languages you like better and which features you need, we haven't open sourced Oxygen yet, but that's coming soon. We have it's in a separate repo right now, but we're going to start merging it into Hemi Network instead. So stay tuned for that. So TBC, fully open source for the last, 2 years. That's in Go, and there's some cool stuff you could do with that. There's also ordinals work if you're interested in doing ordinals related stuff. Is like you want to build an ordinals explorer, whatever. We have a really cool ordinals indexer that's hasn't been merged in yet, but it's in a PR if you wanted to take a look at that, play around with it. And then Oxygen will be open source soon as we pull it into Hemi Network. And if you're doing anything like ZK related with Bitcoin, that's the Rust indexer that would let you do all of those things. Godbrand likes Rust. Rust is a mixed bag, but that's I think we beat that horse on previous engineering days.
Yeah, we
have
definitely covered Rust. That's for sure. All right. Great attendance today. We are at the top of the hour though, so we gotta go for today. But thank you to everyone who joined us. Thank you for the great questions. We'll see you at Midweek with Max. If anyone has any outros, by all means, but I'll keep mine short because this isn't Midweek with Max. So
cool. Yeah, nothing on my side. Stay tuned for some of the cool stuff we're going to be open sourcing, like the ZK Marketplace and Oxygen in the near future. I think there's a lot of cool stuff in there people could build around and do interesting, unique things with. So looking forward to getting that out there, and appreciate everyone joining us, asking questions. We got enough questions. We didn't have to talk about lawn care, so that's always it's always a plus. And we'll see you next week on Midweek and the week after next week for the next protocol engineering office hours.
Thank you.
All right. Take care, everyone. Thank you.
All right. Cheers.